Right, before we start doing any weathering, let's do a little bit of painting, actual hand painting, no spraying. We're doing hand painting now. And what we want to do is do that nice noticeable F-14 red rim that goes around the wheel well doors. So to do this, I mean, you know, you need a bit of a steady hand, but we can kind of like, for those of you who have got maybe a little bit of a shaky hand, try and make it as easy as possible. But the paint I'm going to use for this, I like using Citadel. Whenever it comes to using a brush and painting, I do like the Citadel paints because they just brush a lot nicer than Tamiya, Vlasier, extra acrylic, all them paints that we mix together, we thin down and spray. These are really good for brush painting. When it comes to using a brush as well, you know, I do highly recommend that you use Series 7. I know they're expensive paint brushes, but if you search around, you can get them at bargain prices. And it is one of these things that if you've never brought something like a top-notch Series 7 Winsor & Newton paintbrush, you will notice the difference from standard paintbrushes. It will improve your painting a lot. What we're going to do, you can water it down, but I'm just going to use some of our homebrew thinners. We just pour that just on a little palette here, and we can just mix to a consistency that we like. So mixing, well, sort of thinning down with the paintbrush our homebrew thinners and our, what colour is this? This is Evil Sun Scarlet, and you want it to a nice sort of a nice coverage, but not thick paint, so that you get brush strokes. So it's just getting that kind of experience to kind of know how thin you want your paint to actually get it to go on nice and smooth and thin, but with the coverage you need, so you're not doing 100 coats, but not, you don't want it so thick that you end up with brush strokes. And then what we're going to do, let's bring you in even closer, get some of this out of the way, is we're just going to very carefully just paint around like so. Right, and we just gently take the brush along and fill it in. Now if we have any mistakes, right, we can get a cotton wool bud, moist, and we can just rub it across, but rub it across once and then turn the cotton wool bud like so. Right, because what's going to happen is we've got red paint on there now, just a little bit, you might be able to see it. If we brush across where we've got red paint on the end of the tip, we're going to leave a smudge. So it's just one brush across, turn it to a clean part of the cotton wool bud, and then brush across once again. So just remember not to kind of basically apply smudged on red paint. And we just take this along like so. There you go. And then what you've got is we've got a bit of a dodgy edge going on there. Now as you're going along painting on this red paint, always turn over and check the other side to make sure you haven't got anything going over onto the back, right? Because when it comes to making mistakes, plain and simply, if we get to it before the paint actually dries, we can tidy it up and clean it up really quick, really easy. The reason for this is we've been putting gloss coats on between protecting our paint work, and then we put a gloss coat on to lock in all our decals. We've got a nice gloss coat on this, so with wet paint, and I can probably just show you, if I just paint on here a little red mark, hold on, let's make it a bit bigger than that. Right, we've got a red mark on there. If we get a cotton wool bud, because we've got a gloss coat, we can just wipe that up nice and easy like so. That gloss coat has like sealed everything in, made a nice smooth surface, so we can just wipe up any wet paint easy peasy. So just keep checking the back. And for doing the sides, what we want to do is we don't want to use the tip of the paintbrush, we want to use the side of the paintbrush right, and we just want to drag it along like so. Do a bit and check the other side, right, because this is where we're going to get anything going over onto our backside there. So do that again using the side of the paintbrush. We're just dragging it along to give us a nice, neat, straight edge. No need to mask. We can just go all the way along using the side of the paintbrush like so. Check the other side, make sure there's no paint going over, and we got a little bit of a touch up here, right, and there you go. That now has all nicely been painted with a few little tips and tricks there to tidy up, clean up, get nice straight edges, but you're going to need a bit of a steady hand to do that. And that is basically our wheel well doors there. We've also got some landing gear. I'm not going to kind of show you everything because it is kind of basic. Plain and simply, we can paint our silver bits on our landing gear as well as we've got some little tiny silver bits also on the end of our sidewinders here. We can paint on a bit of silver there, and then we're going to be looking at some salt weathering technique, which done a little bit, and hopefully you might be able to see on camera we've got this nice light sort of salt weathering technique going on there, which I think because we're on camera, because we've got like both a matte and a glossy surface going on, because the way this is going on, I'll explain it more, but we're going to end up with a real nice kind of technique going on there. We're now going to enter into the weathering stage. All our decals now have had 3 good coats of Future go on, and that has now sealed in all the decals so that we can actually nicely weather up, because we're going to be using all sorts of stuff like washes and salt techniques with this, and what we don't want is decals getting wash going under the decal film and everything, and that's the whole point of putting on a nice gloss coat to prevent, well, just to protect your decals and stop stuff like that happening. Now what we're going to look at is going to be the salt weathering technique. Now I want to do this now before we do any kind of weathering, because after doing the salt technique it's a good idea to also seal that in with a gloss coat before any kind of putting washes on, so it kind of adds almost another stage to the whole kind of build process of building, spraying, decaling and finishing. So what we're going to do, we're going to get some rock salt and we're going to put it into, or you could buy one of these nice little, where you kind of like turn it and it sort of kind of grounds it down into nice kind of big and small bits of rock salt to give us lots of different kind of smaller and bigger sized pieces of rock salt to really give us a nice effect. Because what the rock salt is basically doing is it's acting as a natural masking tape in a sense, to give us a natural weathered look. So to get started, what we're going to do, we're going to get some warm water, which I've just got here in a cup, and we're going to throw it into our airbrush. Which is probably a better idea to use a pipette. You could put it in like a spray bottle, some warm water. You basically just want to get warm water sprayed on the model. Alright, so we just want to get it all nicely sprayed on. Right, you want to go nuts, right? And I mean you want to go nuts as in you want it looking actually almost dripping. Right, this is why we want to also make sure our gloss coat has had time to dry. So we're looking almost dripping here now. In fact, let's get my turntable. There we go. Make sure we're all, there we go, we're looking pretty dripping. Then we want to get our rock salt and we just want to go nuts and get loads of it down. Let's not mess about. Alright, just have some fun. Loads of rock salt down there. Maybe we could give it a quick from a distance, spray some more water on it, because we want this to start to kind of stick well, not kind of stick to the model, but kind of start to nicely go in place on our model. Right. Maybe what you might want to do as well is maybe just here on our engine bits here, let's remove some of this rock salt, because I don't actually want to have the effect on these areas. You can mask them up if you want, but I'm just going to try and avoid them by being a bit more precise with my spraying. So just check and make sure you've got rock salt everywhere where you want it. You could probably do with maybe a bit more up here in the nosy section area. And maybe a little bit more just here. Right, and maybe a little bit more water just to make sure our rock salt is doing all that dissolving business and doing its work, ready for us to do some spraying. Now what we need to do is we need this rock salt to dry first before we do anything, because when it dries it's going to sort of stick to the model and, you know, act as like Tamiya masking tape basically, and kind of mask this up really nice for a bit of spraying. So getting a hairdryer, right, you want to get the hairdryer, you don't want to point it directly, well I mean you want to point it directly but not have it real close to our actual model here. You want it on a low setting and you don't want it too hot, right? So nice low setting, not too hot, and you just want to nicely dry down the rock salt until it's all nice and dry. Right, hopefully as you can see, it's looking a bit of a mess, a bit scary, and something that you potentially might not want to attempt. But what we've got here, we've got rock salt now dried on to the model, and what this water is allowing it to do is it all kind of dissolves a bit, so then you get these kind of salt stains, salt weathering stains, and it's kind of sort of stuck to the model a bit, enough so that you can actually tilt the model a bit and it doesn't all just fall off, right? But the cool thing is if we brush this off, rubbed it down with some water, it will come up squeaky clean again. So we haven't actually harmed the model, right? But what has happened now is we've got all this rock salt sort of making a kind of a Tamiya masking tape kind of pattern naturally that we can now take advantage of and make a really cool bit of a weathering technique. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be using Vallejo's new Model Air 71120 US Air Force medium grey. Now this colour is supposed to be Federal Standard 36320, which is what we've been using, which is our H307, which remember we did our side colour with it, and we also went on top and did H307 50-50 mix with H337. So what we've got here is something that is resembling, you know, about the same colour that we've been using, and the reason why I'm doing this is I want to kind of mix the colours up a bit, in the sense that I want it to still be generally, you know, we're going for the colour that we're going for, but it's just mixing it up a bit, kind of giving it a bit of a different tone here and a different bit of a hue there, because I mean, you know, we want to liven this up, we want lots of different hues and different shades of sort of like the same colour to give us a really kind of eye-catching bit of paintwork, right? So this is what I'm going to go for Vallejo, and it is a little bit easier to use. And what we're going to do, we're going to get our airbrush, we're going to whack in some of our homebrew thinners, and we're going to make a sort of a bleaching stroke post shading kind of mix. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put, you know, a nice couple of drops into there, along with, give it a mix, some of our Vallejo white, right, and give that just a couple of drops. So we're ending up really with something around about maybe like a 20% paint to 80% thinners kind of mixture, so we can really get really thin, really transparent, just like bleaching, just like post shading, nice and thin. We're going to give that a mix, and we should end up with a kind of a nice light sort of grey, as you're probably seeing just in the colour cup there, which that looks like that's going to be nice, and it looks nice and thin as well. So what we want to achieve here is sort of the same thing that you get with bleaching. We don't want to go off and just blast the whole model, right? Because I mean, it's just going to look a little bit naff for it to be completely all over, and it might be a bit too overpowering and too over the top. So let's think bleaching, because we've got a lighter colour here. Think about inside your panel lines, and let's sort of try and bleach some centre panel lines. So let's make sure our mix is good. We also want to get our air pressure as low as we'd like to get it. Right, because the problem is all this rock salt, I mean, we get too close, as you do with like bleaching and stuff, we're going to blow rock salt off, and we don't want that. We want the rock salt to stay. So just checking my flow. Right then, so let's just start bleaching inside some of our panels here, nice and light. We don't have to get absolutely everywhere, we're just kind of generally giving a little bit inside all our little panel lines, like so. Right, so there we go, we've done like a bleaching kind of pattern around here, but maybe a little bit lighter than normal, because we want to keep this nice and subtle. Now the hard thing about doing this rock salt technique is, because we're doing such light effects with the spraying, and because it kind of blends in with all the salt, you can't really tell exactly how you're doing. So I would recommend you go round it lightly, because at the end of the day, if you go round it lightly, it's only gone on lightly. Whereas if you go in heavy and you can't really tell and see what exactly is being sprayed that effectively, you could kind of ruin it, and you might have to kind of have the problem of removing everything, which is kind of why it's a bit risky. But now I've gone round and done that general bit of like bleaching. What I want to do now is target certain areas. So for our little airbags here, I want these to be quite riffy, so I'm kind of going to give these a little bit more of a focus. Okay, just like so. And then what I want to do is just a quick general light blast pass sort of all over, and I mean light, we're not kind of covering it, it's just a quick blast just to maybe get a slight general light layer of this on, and I mean light layer. Right, so now that we've now got that done, what we want to do is make a bit of a darker mix. So we've used a bit of our paint in here, so let's get a little bit more thinners in, like so, and we're probably going to need a bit more of our colour that we've been using, which is our US Air Force medium grey Vallejo model there. A couple of drops in there, and then what I want to do is come along and make a bit of a grimy kind of looking colour. So I'm going to add some burnt umber to the mix. Again, let's give them a bit of shake. Right, so we've got our burnt umber, which is Vallejo 71040. And there we go, just added a couple of drops of that in there. Let's give it a mix, and let's just kind of, let's see, you know, where we're going with our colours. and you know, we're looking nice and brown, which is the way we kind of want it. So using our next colour as another bit of a mix, we're going to add some black. Right, so we're going to get a bit of a dark grey with a bit of a brown going in there, giving us a bit of a grimy sort of look. So a couple of drops of that. Hopefully, as you can see, that's now darkening up nicely, but we're going to need a bit more black than that. A couple more drops. And there we go, that's mixing into a real nice kind of dark grey but a bit of a grimy kind of look to it, which should turn out quite nice. Because I mean, the post shading that we've done before, it was normally just a darker tone, but with this we want it to be a bit dirtier. This is why we've added that bit of burnt umber to the mix. Right, let's put our paintbrush out the way, and then we just want to blast through. Ooh, now I've just spilt that, so remember, get out your paper towel and wipe it up, because you're going to get it blasting out on the end, spluttering out in splutters and everything. So we're just going to now spray this through and get it like so. That's looking good. Now what we're going to do now with this, we're going to think post shading. So we're going to think inside the panel lines, but we want to do this lightly, because remember, we don't want to go nuts, because you know, this is we spray it on lightly and it will give you a nice general all-round effect. Because I've seen people do this and they go a little bit nuts with this spraying side of things and it looks a bit OTT. And with this as well, we want to start, let's just concentrate on a bit of a panel line here and there. Right, we're not really going to do every panel line. Right, we're not doing any major going over every single panel line, every single rivet. We're just giving a bit of a panel line here and a panel line there. And then what you want to do as well is maybe have a little bit of a focus patch. Right, so back here, right, what we've got at the back here, let's bring you in a bit more. We've got a little bit of, quite a bit of a cluster of rock salt here. So what we can do is maybe try doing a bit of a mottly sort of area here, lightly spray it, just to give us, like, there's a bit of a dirty patch going on there, and we've just really lightly sprayed that. So we want to do that kind of all round, picking out the odd little patchy bit, following a bit of a panel line here and a bit of a panel line there, but keeping it so subtle. Nice patchy bit here with the whole airbag system. So you're probably not being able to see exactly what's going on here, because I mean, as I say, it's one of these things where you've got so much salt on here, it is really hard to tell where you're actually spraying, and you've kind of got to do a bit of guesswork and kind of almost trust that hopefully it will work out all right in the end. But we have gone over this nice and lightly with all that kind of nice bit of light spraying, and hopefully when we remove all this now, it's going to look good. But before we do that, we just want to make sure that everything is dry. So we want to get our hairdryer on, nice light, not on the mega hot setting, not absolutely blowing it out, and we just want to make sure everything's all dry, all the paint's dry, ready for when we remove this. Here comes the result part. Right, so this is all now dry, our paint work is all dry. Now we've got to clean it off. Now you've got to be careful at this stage, because we don't want to be like rubbing this stuff really hard and everything, because we're talking rock salt here. If you kind of rub down on this too much, it's gonna leave scratches in the paintwork, right? So we want to remove it nicely, delicately and easily. Not only that, I mean, rub at it too much as well, we can also rub away the spray work that we've done, because let's face it, you know, there's no protective gloss coats protecting the bit of spray work that we've done on here. It will wipe away as well. So I'll just do a nice little patch just to show you. Right, using a brush, dipping it in warm water, right, we want to just brush away at least the big bits of the rock salt, right, like so, brushing that away. And we just want to get rid of the big bits so that we can kind of rub down the rest with a paper towel in a sec. There we go, we've rubbed that down. Then we can get a paper towel, right, and we want to just lightly rub this back. I mean lightly again, because remember we don't want to do any scratching, like so. And then we can get some more water, right, because we've got most of it off now. And we just want to get rid of those little bits that are maybe in little kind of nooks and crannies, just kind of get into there, brush them out, just like so. I think we've had some go down that little air vent there, but I think we'll be alright. You can, if you wish, go into the kitchen, put this under a tap and just rinse it off, right, but I mean I've got no kitchen in my workshop, so we'll have to do without. And then we'll just rub this back like so, and you might be seeing the effect, right, and because remember I went round and did it lightly and not heavily so I don't ruin it, it's just a bit light. So let's get the hairdryer on it just to dry it all back. And this is where you start to see the results, is where it dries off. Right then, I think that's dried back enough for you to at least see the results. I'll show you more when I've completely rubbed it down, but hopefully what you're seeing, bring in the light a bit more, let's get a good look at this. Hopefully what you're seeing is this really kind of weathered, mottled, I mean you can kind of really see it here, it's left this real nice weathered effect just on top, which does look absolutely great. I really do like that. I mean, you know, it's one of these things where, I mean, if you've never done it before, you really do hum and ah, and you think, oh, it does look like a good effect, but I mean, it just sounds a bit, you know, throwing rock salt and water all over and then just spraying all over, and it's just like, you know, you've spent like potentially 6 months getting to this stage and you don't want to ruin it, but it really does leave such a nice effect. Now on camera, I don't know if you've seen that very well, but the problem is, because we've sealed in our decals with a really nice gloss coat, and then what we've done is, in essence, we've come on and we've sprayed on a matte paint on top, so you're getting a bit of a matte and a glossy, two different kind of surfaces going on there. So I don't know if you can actually see it that well, but hopefully what's going to happen is it's going to be enhanced better and more professional when we come to put that last matte coat down, and that's then going to kind of blend everything in better and nicer, and hopefully this should look absolutely spot on. But just remember, this effect, as good as you might think it is, I do think that you can go overboard with it, so just do it lightly at first. Your first attempt, just do it lightly all over the model, even if it doesn't look, even though you can't see it so much, you've had that first go, you've had that first practice, you can see how it's working, how it's going on, and then you can push it a bit further maybe with your second model. So there we go, we are now all done with the salt weathering technique. Now I don't know how well you're going to see this and pick this up on camera. I'm going to bring you as close as I can. Hopefully, as you can see, I mean, it's really noticeable here where you've got like a dark area by our airbags, and we did concentrate on that area, and this is the kind of effect that you are getting with this salt weathering technique. You've also got it just nicely sort of patchy all over the place, kind of not too in your face, but just nice and light, and we've got all these kind of lighter, patchier areas. I think because of the light, you're kind of just not quite seeing it, I don't think. I hope you am, because it really does look really amazing, to be honest with you. I'm really happy that I've done this salt weather technique. On the underside, because the underside is so light, I didn't kind of do so much of the lighter shade of grey. I kind of went more sort of doing our darker grimy mixture that we made up, and concentrated again on our exhausts and air intakes, and we've got all this really kind of dark sort of nice patchy work going on there as well. And that is basically it. Now, when it came to cleaning it up, I was showing you kind of cleaning it up using the brush and everything, but because we've put the salt everywhere, what has kind of basically happened is it kind of gets into all the nooks and crannies. So it is a little bit of a tedious task of cleaning it up, kind of just, you know, using kitchen paper towels to kind of rub it down and get the salt off, and even coming in with cotton wool buds and sort of getting into the nooks, the crannies, and getting it up. Because what's in essence happening here is, you know, the paint has created that nice kind of patchy work, but then you can get the actual salt drying onto the model, and you get those kind of white sort of salt marks that you get when salt dries, which in some cases it depends how you want to go about it, because it can dry actually in a nice way in which you're kind of like, actually that looks like a nice good bit of weathering. I'm going to leave it, seal it in with a gloss coat, and that will actually probably look good. Sometimes, I mean, well, kind of more so than not, it does actually look a little bit naff. So, you know, nice bit of moisture on a cotton wool bud and sort of wipe them up, kind of like so. But it is a bit kind of deceiving, because although you think you've wiped it up because you've like used moisture on a cotton wool bud to sort of kind of get rid of it, when it kind of dries it can kind of come back, depending if you've managed to clean it up good or not. So that's just a bit about the cleanup. Now what I'm going to go off and do now is I'm going to seal it in with Future.